So the idea was that I was going to climb onto a small paper or cardboard soapbox in the speaker's corner of SAP NOW in 4 different cities in the Nordics. That's not going to happen. The topic I was going to talk about was the Kientic Enterprise. And in all fairness, the Kientic Enterprise is really hard to cover in 15 minutes. So I was more shooting for a brief introduction, or more as a starting point for further conversation. What I was going to give you, though, was a good story, because I love a good story. And that story is about purpose. And I'm going to use this guy as an example. There's no living person on this planet that I admire more than Alex Honnold. And when I say admire, I do shake my head in disbelief at some of the things that he's doing on a daily basis. On September 6th, back in 2008, Alex found himself at the base of this 2,000-foot near vertical granite wall called Half Dome in the heart of Yosemite National Park in California. The mission that day was to climb the northwest facade. This is something that a team of skilled climbers will normally do in about 2 days. So sleeping on a portal ledge about halfway up. At the end of the day, Alex will have done it in 2 hours and 50 minutes. And that is not what makes this climb so amazing. As he stands there at the foot, he's wearing shorts, a long-sleeve t-shirt, and his climbing shoes. He's carrying some snacks, some water, an iPod, and chalk. What he doesn't have is a rope. He doesn't have pistons. He doesn't have a harness. Because Alex is going to free solo this wall. This means climbing it completely without aid. It's one of the biggest challenges you can put yourself up for in the climbing world. And this is a big wall. Even if you have never been up close to Half Dome, I guess just from this picture you can imagine that it is an imposing wall. And it's riddled with rather complex climbing problems or cruxes to be solved. And some of these problems leave no margin for error. And if you're not roped up, an error means certain death. But Alex is one of the best climbers in the world. And this day he is feeling super excited, he's in tune with everything, and he's ready to go. And he starts floating up the wall, solving problem after problem. And before you know it, he has covered 90% of the route, taking him about here. And this is where we have the Thank God ledge. If you or I would be put on that ledge, it would be a terrifying experience. But for Alex, it's a chance to kick back a little. Shortly after leaving the Thank God ledge, a little bit higher up, there is a problem, or a crux that needs to be solved, which requires Alex to rely on a single foothold. So he needs to be able to push off that hold to reach some finger holds and then to move up. When I say foothold, I guess we could say that Alex's right big toe needs to get the job done. But as he finds himself facing this problem, Alex doesn't really feel it anymore. He can no longer trust that he's going to be able to do this. He doesn't feel it. He's getting anxious. He's verging on panicking. His options are limited. He can't climb down because then you can't see your hands and feet. He can't just stay on the wall and hope for rescue because he didn't tell anyone he was going to climb this route today. So staying there, he will cramp up and he will fall off and die. One solution is that within reach, there is a piston in the wall left there by aid climbers. He could grab hold of that one and just use it to pull himself up or secure himself while he's pushing off that foothold. But that would void the entire free solo. So that option doesn't really stick in Alex's mind. Instead, he goes into a mental bubble where he starts visualizing how that hold is going to work for him, and he starts visualizing himself getting to the top. And before we know it, the good feelings come back. And he just feels it in his entire body, and he pushes off, and for him then it's an easy scramble to the top. And this is such an amazing achievement, so that Alex is carrying a climber's journal where he writes down every single climb. You would expect him to write down like a big smiley face and exclamation marks and just, sheer joy. He puts down a little frowny face and the following words: do better. Because the fact that he panicked, for lack of better words, on the wall has tainted the entire experience for Alex. For him, it's not such a great climb anymore. And I think this gives a little bit of insight into the mind of Alex. So the technical achievement as such is not enough for him. He is driven by a higher purpose or a different purpose or a bigger purpose. I don't know what it is. I think we will probably never know exactly what goes on inside Alex Honnold's mind, but there is something more there. And I think that's pretty cool. Will he be able to do that? Well, 9 years later, Alex pulls off the most amazing free solo the world has ever seen when he climbs the El Cap, which is also inside Yosemite. But that's a different story. That's for another time. Because right now, I want to go back and talk to you a little bit about purpose and purpose regarding the Kientic Enterprise. So, when we look at the world around us, when we look at the companies that were created 100 years or so back in time or founded, one key mantra for a lot of these companies have been the built to last. That's what we call them, the traditional enterprise, right? But as we are living now in times where exponential technologies are reaching maturity at approximately the same time, there's a bit of external pressure on these companies. This is an old example, but it took about 100 years for typewriters to PC. Then it took us another 30 years to go from PCs to some kind of smart mobility. And Neuralink will probably this year, if Elon Musk is keeping his promises, will be in less than 3 years. He would have gone from idea to starting drilling holes into people's brains to connect the brain directly to a machine. So that is sort of this pace of the technology change. But then if you look at other sort of macro factors, the last time there was a big hoo-ha in the ERP business was around the turn of the century. So the Y2K or the Millennium Bug, you had a lot of different names. But that's 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, China's GDP was about 12% of the US. And today, China is around roughly 70%. And in a few years' time, it will surpass the US. The US will fall to number 3rd behind India. Closer to us, 1999 was where we saw the monetary union, launched with the euro. And right now, we're in the sort of last negotiations of the Brexit. So there's a lot of macro influencing factors hitting companies today. On a more micro level, we are past the longest sort of positive time period from an economic or financial point of view in history. So every day the KPIs, the indicators tells us that there will be a cooling off of the economy, right? And maybe the coronavirus is going to be the thing that sends us spiraling down into a proper recession. Who knows? There are, this side, there's just also a lot of things affecting traditional companies. I don't know how many of you remember the Olean study. It's now 5 years old, where the Olean guys over at Washington University said that 40% of the S&P 500 will be extinct in 10 years. We're about the halfway mark now, and I think these guys are a little bit ahead of schedule. So all these different things are affecting these companies that was sort of built to last. And that sort of begs the question, is that sort of the prevailing model going forward? Is this a sustainable way of doing it? And we at Deloitte think maybe not. We like to talk more about companies that are built to evolve. We call this the Kientic Enterprise, and it is based on 4 pillars. The first one, top left corner, is the intelligent. The intelligent enterprise that I have been talking a lot about, that a lot of people have been talking about for the last couple of years. How to leverage all the new tech to make good, to focus on higher value-adding tasks. That is a core pillar. But another thing that is also important is to be more responsive, how to make sure that we become more agile. Mergers, acquisitions, and divestments will continue to happen, and computer power is something that is changing all the time, the needs that we have for it. So here we talk about, embracing the hyperscalers, whether it's AWS, Google, Microsoft, or Alibaba, it doesn't really matter. But that is a core ingredient in becoming a Kientic Enterprise. And then we have the inclusive side. And the inclusive side is really about, the days of the monolithic pave wall to wall with the same sort of ERP solution or whatever. Those days are gone. So we need to start looking at ERP or SAP then in a context, an ecosystem of different types of applications. And we know that Gartner just announced that there is a sort of a trend now in big companies that some of these core applications are actually being ripped out of the cloud and put back in the basement, whereas the overall general trend is going to the cloud. So that's one way of seeing it. Another way of seeing it is also the inclusiveness of data, so that while we might be used to running our businesses on operational data, we now need to start thinking about experience data and machine data, how that plays into all of this. And then clean is to me is so super important, because I was part of building these monsters back late 90s, where we just ripped open our new nice new SAP systems or whatever and started changing things on the inside. So going more on the lean and clean concept is also going to be crucial to avoid generating another wave of technical debt. So all these things come together in what we call then the Kientic Enterprise. And as you said, that this is just a small teaser. I'm more than happy to talk more about it, however, but also please check out the resources that we have at Deloitte in the form of podcasts, in the form of web announcements, etc. So that was I'm going to talk to. That was my purpose of the Speaker's Corner, but hope this gave you a little bit of a teaser would have been going down if we would have run the event as planned. Thank you for now, and take care. Cheers.